Hi everyone, Ainsley here from Small Fry Creations, and this week I'm going to show you how I built my timber storage rack with the bonus of it hiding behind my miter saw station. Let me show you how I did it. As you can see, I have recently painted my workbench, and something that has annoyed me for a long time now is this timber storage. And if you're like me with any woodworking, you don't like to throw away the scraps, but I also don't want them on view. So I've got an idea, because behind this workbench I've got some dead space and I want to turn it into something useful to store all this away and out of camera. So let's get this out of the way and I'll show you what I'm talking about. With my workbench, the miter saw box sits about 450mm beyond the actual workbench itself, meaning that I've got that much of dead space sitting behind here that I can utilise for timber storage. The bonus of this also means that I get the timber away out of camera, but it's still really easy for me to access. So I'm going to go ahead and get my sheets of plywood cut down to size, and then we can start putting this thing together.
The space I had to work with was 180 long by 445mm wide. I got the hardware store to cut the big pieces, which was 1800 by 750mm, which will make up the sides and the middle. The rest of the plywood will be used for the bottom, dividers and the drawers. I started by cutting the plywood down for the dividers for the long timber. The challenge on this project was working with such large pieces on my own. To secure the side to the bottom, I pre-drilled all the holes in the bottom piece. With the side propped up off the floor, I could clamp the bottom into place and screw it together. I'm not using any wood glue in this project. In the event that I need to make changes, I can reuse the plywood.
Working in a cramped workspace, and I probably really should have done some cleanup before I started this project, but it is what it is. We're up to the part where we are working on the dividers for the things like decking timbers, things like that are not very wide, but they are long. And I've cut myself a spacer here, and I've already got the first divider in, which I've pre-drilled from the top and then screwed in from underneath, because it just makes it easier with the big panels to handle on my own. So I'm going to use my spacer and run it along the board here with my pencil mark, and I can mark where the next board needs to go. I'll lay the board in and mark the other side of it so that I know the thickness, and I can pre-drill from the top and screw it in from underneath. I've just divided this board equally amongst the number of shelves that I'm going to put in. No special science to it, but I think this is going to work really well. So I'm going to go ahead and get these screwed, and then that way I can put the top sheet on top from there.
I found having the plywood on the workbench and screwing from underneath made it much easier to get the plywood aligned and screwed together. With the main section together, I could get it off the workbench, which I couldn't have made look more difficult, and then get it lined up with the other side and bottom. Working with the storage on the side made it easy for screwing and again getting everything in the right spot.
The timber storage is basically now all constructed, and this is the bottom that we're looking at. I'm up to the part where I need to put casters on, but for me, I need to steal the casters off my current timber storage, so I need to take that apart before I can go ahead and mount these. One thing that I did want to share with you is when you're drilling and you can't see the timber on the other side, I used a scrap off cut so that I could put it up against the timber and draw lines on either side, so I knew that I was screwing into the piece of timber. So that is now all together. I also need to build some drawers for the little pieces of scrap timber that I want to store. I also need to put a divider in there, so we've got a little bit of way to go, but we're going to go ahead and get those casters put on now.
The main thing with the casters was making sure that they could hold the weight, which I knew would be okay as the current ones were coping just fine on the current storage. I used a scrap block of plywood to give the casters more meat to screw into, and I used Craig screws to secure the casters.
I've got the casters on and we can now turn this up the right way and start to work on the drawers. Let's see if I can do this. Now we can start to work on the divider that needs to go in here. And the sheet, the reason why I'm putting the divider in here is on this side, I'm going to put the drawers for the small goods. And on this side, it's for sheet goods. And generally speaking, I don't have sheet goods that are longer than 1200. So that's where I'm going to put the divider, which leaves me with about 1/2 meter to make the drawers for the small goods. So that's what I'm going to do. This will also stiffen up and give support laterally on this storage. So let's go ahead and get that divider in. Just before I pop in this divider, I have used a rabbiting bit in the router to actually route out a groove for 6mm plywood. And the reason why I've done that is when this is sitting behind the bench on either side of the miter saw box, there is gaps. So that way I can actually just put like a lid. It's not going to be screwed down, it's just going to sit on top, but it can sit in these rabbets, and that means it's just going to keep the dust off the scrap wood, or as much dust as humanly possible. Just means the cleanup is going to be a little bit easier. Everything now but the drawers is completely in and ready to go, and I think we can actually start filling this guy up. So you can see on this end here is where the 2 drawers are going to go. So I'm going to make those next, but in the meantime, to clean up this workshop, to lower my stress levels a little bit, I am going to load up as much as I can now just to clean up some stuff and give myself a better work surface. And then we'll go ahead and make these drawers, and then we've got somewhere to put the little guys.
I tried keeping the timber species together when loading up the cart, and I put the longest pieces at the bottom and worked my way up to the thin pieces on top. This is also a great opportunity to sort through my scraps and keep the pieces that I could actually see myself using in the future. The drawers are nothing special with very simple construction. I used the same 19mm plywood for the whole box and just screwed it together with the same 40mm screws that I used throughout the project. I used a 60mm hole saw bit to cut a circle in the front of the box and rounded the edges with a router to make it comfortable to grab.
The last drawer is made and it's ready to be put in and loaded up with all of the small scrap. The last job that I need to do is go ahead and cut the plywood right at the top, but at first I want to get this into position and then I can measure exactly what these pieces of plywood at the top need to be. A couple of challenges that I've faced along the way mainly is with getting this divider in and the divider in at the back of the drawers. I probably should have put that in hindsight right at the beginning when I first had screwed this piece together. In the end I had to come through at an angle underneath, but I got it done. Just because of how tight in the spacing was, I couldn't get the drill in to actually screw anything in. I couldn't use pocket holes or anything like that. So it's in there, it's secured, it will do the job. So I'm going to go ahead and get these loaded up. I'm going to pull out the miter saw station, tack this in behind it. Hopefully it all fits. I've measured it, I think it should. And then we can wrap up this project and we'll call it done.
I used the top drawer for small pieces of timber and the bottom drawer for small sheet good cut-offs. Like I said, the challenge was the divider for the drawers and the sheet goods. I should have pocket holed these to the long storage first and then screwed the side piece on at the end. But at the end of the day, I got it secured and it worked out. As I'm editing this video a couple of weeks after finishing the build, I can tell you that I'm super happy with the result. It has freed up useful floor space and made the workshop feel much cleaner.
there you have it. It's all in place and all done, and I'm really happy with it. It tucks away nicely behind the workbench, and it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. Some specs for you: I'm using 19mm ply. It took me 3 sheets of plywood in total because of these big 3 dividers. I hope you've liked this project. If you have, help me out by hitting those subscribe and like buttons, and I'll see you on the next one.